The final bell of the Galactic Academy rang with a soft, melodic chime that echoed through the polished corridors. For most students, this sound meant freedom. It was a time to flow toward the recreation centers or hover back to their dormitories. But for Maya, it meant she could finally stop holding her breath. Maya was a human, a species known in the darker parts of the galaxy as a Deathworlder. This was a secret she kept hidden. To everyone else, she was just a quiet girl with slightly duller skin and a strange tolerance for heat. She sat at her desk, waiting for the room to clear. She had to be careful. Humans were much stronger than the other species at the school, and if she moved too fast, she might break a desk or hurt someone by accident. She waited until her violet-skinned classmate floated out the door before she slowly stood up. She picked up her bag, slinging it over one shoulder with practiced ease. She kept her head down and walked into the hallway. The hallway was made of a glass-like material that shimmered with soft light. It was beautiful, but it was also fragile. Maya walked in the center of the path, afraid that if she brushed against the wall, she might shatter it. The school was filled with students from high-gravity worlds and low-gravity moons, but none of them were from Earth. Earth was a terrifying legend in this sector, a place where the wildlife wanted to kill you and the very air tried to burn your lungs. Maya knew that if the others found out where she was from, they would panic. They would look at her not as a student, but as a wild animal. So, she kept to herself. She kept her steps light and her voice soft. Today, however, something felt wrong. The usual chatter of students dying down as she turned the corner toward the main exit. The wide corridor, usually filled with beings gliding and chatting, was completely empty. Maya stopped walking. She looked around, her eyes narrowing. The silence was heavy. She saw a group of 5 students standing near the large archway that led to the transport pads. They were not moving. They were standing in a semicircle, blocking the only way out. Maya recognized them immediately. They were the upperclassmen, the elite of the academy. In the center was Kale. Kale was tall, with pale blue skin and sharp features. He wore the uniform of a senior officer, adorned with silver pins that showed his high rank. He was looking at Maya with a smile that did not reach his eyes. His 4 friends stood behind him, their postures aggressive and stiff. Maya felt her heart rate begin to rise. She knew Kale. He was the kind of student who enjoyed power. He enjoyed making the younger students feel small. But he had never bothered Maya before. She tried to step to the side, to find a different route, but Kale stepped forward, blocking her path. "There is no need to leave, Earth student," Kale said. His voice was smooth, like velvet over stone. Maya froze. He knew. He knew what she was. The blood drained from her face, but she forced herself to stand tall. She gripped the strap of her bag tighter. She did not speak. She knew that sometimes, silence was the best defense. Kale laughed softly, a sound that made the hair on the back of Maya's neck stand up. "Did you think we would not notice?" he asked, taking another step closer. He circled her, looking at her as if she were a specimen in a jar. "Your bone density is too high. Your muscle mass is too dense for a low-gravity world. You hide it well, wearing those loose clothes, but you cannot hide your nature." Maya watched him carefully. She did not like the way his friends were moving. They were spreading out, encircling her. They were carrying heavy bags, the kind used for equipment. Maya's mind raced. She needed to get out of here. She needed to get to a public area where there were cameras. "I don't know what you are talking about," Maya said. She kept her voice flat, trying to sound bored. I am late for my transport. Please let me pass. She tried to push past Kale, but one of his friends, a large reptilian creature, stepped in front of her. He hissed, showing rows of sharp teeth. Maya stopped. She looked at the reptile. She knew that species. They were fast, but they were cold-blooded. If she could hit them hard enough, once, they would slow down. But she did not want to fight. Fighting would mean expulsion. Fighting would mean revealing exactly how dangerous she really was. You are not going anywhere, Kale said. He tapped a device on his wrist. Suddenly, the lights in the corridor flickered and changed color. They turned from a soft blue to a dim red. I have looped the security feed in the sector, Kale said, his voice dripping with arrogance. For the next hour, the school thinks this hallway is empty. Just us. He looked at his friends and nodded. The others reached into their bags and pulled out devices. They were not standard stun batons. They were heavy-duty capture gear. Metal cuffs, sonic emitters, and neural disruptors. This was not a bullying prank. This was a planned abduction. Maya felt a cold pit form in her stomach. She understood now. Kale didn't just want to tease her. He wanted to sell her. Human beings were rare. A live human was worth a fortune to the right collectors. People who wanted to see a Deathworlder up close, people who wanted to study them. You have made a very foolish mistake, Kale, Maya said. Her voice was low, but it was steady. She dropped her bag on the floor. It hit the ground with a heavy thud that seemed to surprise the aliens. They exchanged glances. Kale smirked. The mistake is yours, coming here to our school, Kale replied. He pulled out a small, silver pistol. It was a stun weapon, designed to overload the nervous system of a fragile creature. Do not worry. We will not kill you. We just need to keep you asleep until the buyer arrives. He raised the gun. Maya did not raise her hands. She did not beg, instead, she widened her stance. She grounded her feet. She felt the familiar weight of gravity, the weight her species had evolved to fight against every single second of every day. To these aliens, gravity was a suggestion. To Maya, it was an old friend. It anchored her. Grab her, Kale ordered. The reptilian student lunged first. He was fast, his claws extended to grab her shoulder. Maya didn't dodge. She stepped into his movement. She grabbed his wrist with her left hand. She didn't squeeze hard, or at least, she didn't think she did. But there was a sickening crunch of bone. The reptilian screamed, a high-pitched sound of shock and pain, and pulled back. His wrist hung at an odd angle. The other students hesitated. They looked at their friend in horror, then back at Maya. Maya looked at her own hand. She hadn't meant to break it that easily. She just wanted to stop him. I warned you, Maya said. She looked at Kale. Call off your dogs. Go back to class. I won't tell anyone about this if you leave now. Kale's face twisted in anger. The arrogance was replaced by a snarl. You are just a primitive beast, he spat. He aimed the stun gun and fired. A blue bolt of electricity shot across the distance between them. It hit Maya square in the chest. The impact was like being hit by a sledgehammer. It threw her backward a step. Her muscles seized up. Pain shot through her nerves, sharp and burning. She gasped, the air forced from her lungs. Kale laughed. See, she is weak. Get the nets. But the laughter died in his throat. Because Maya was still standing. She shook her head, clearing the spots from her vision. She flexed her fingers. The pain was fading, replaced by a wave of heat. Her heart was pumping harder now, sending adrenaline rushing through her system. Human beings were tough. They could endure pain, hunger, and heat. They could survive injuries that would kill other species. And now, the prey had turned into the predator. Maya looked up. Her eyes were no longer the soft brown of a student. They were hard, focused, and deadly. That was your only warning shot, Maya said. Kale's eyes went wide. He adjusted the setting on his gun to maximum. Kill her! He shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Just kill her. The remaining 3 students rushed her all at once. They had metallic batons and shock prods. They wanted to beat her into submission. Maya did not move backward. She moved forward. She grabbed the nearest student, a being with tentacles for arms, and shoved him. She didn't shove him hard, she just wanted to push him away. But because of her dense muscles and the adrenaline surging through her, the alien flew backward. He smashed into the glass wall, shattering it into a million pieces. He slid down, unconscious, before he even hit the floor. The hallway was no longer silent. It was filled with the sounds of shouting, breaking glass, and alarms. Kale fired again and again, the blue bolt slamming into Maya's shoulder, her leg, her side. Each hit hurt, burning like fire. But each hit also made her angrier. She was tired of hiding. She was tired of being afraid. She was tired of acting weak just so these fragile creatures could feel superior. She grabbed a metal trash can that was bolted to the floor. With a scream of effort, she ripped it from the moorings. The metal groaned and snapped. She swung the heavy container like a bat, catching the next attacker in the chest. There was a crack of ribs breaking, and the student was thrown against the opposite wall. Maya stood in the center of the wreckage, her chest heaving. She looked at Kale, who was now backing away, his hands trembling. The hunter had become the hunted, and he had just realized he was in a cage with a monster. The blue light from the stun baton sizzled in the air, leaving a sharp smell of ozone mixed with the scent of broken electronics and dust. Maya stood amidst the shattered glass and twisted metal, her chest rising and falling in a slow, heavy rhythm. The last bolt of electricity that had struck her still made her muscles twitch, but the pain was turning into something else. It was turning into a familiar, burning focus. Her heart was beating so hard it felt like a drum inside her ears, but her mind was clear. It was clearer than it had ever been. She looked at her hands. They were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the sudden surge of power that demanded to be released. She looked up at Kale. The senior student was no longer smiling. His face was pale, a ghostly white shade under his blue skin. He held his weapon with both hands, but the barrel was wavering. He had expected a terrified girl who would beg for mercy. Instead, he was facing a wall of muscle and anger that he did not understand. "Stay back!" Kale shouted. His voice cracked, breaking the calm atmosphere of the ruined hallway. "I have authorization to use lethal force if necessary. Do not move." Maya did not listen. She took a step forward. Her boot crunched on the broken glass from the wall she had shattered moments ago. The sound was loud, like a gunshot in the quiet corridor. The 2 remaining conscious bullies looked at each other. They were reptilian and insectoid, creatures evolved to hunt and kill in their own environments. But now, they looked like prey. They could smell the change in the air. The pheromones of fear were rolling off them, thick and sour. Maya could smell it too. It was a stink that triggered something ancient in the back of her brain. On Earth, millions of years ago, her ancestors had hunted animals much larger and stronger than themselves. They had used tools, yes, but they had also used pure, relentless aggression. Maya felt that instinct waking up. It whispered to her that the only way out was through them. "She is a monster," one of the bullies hissed. It was the insectoid, clicking its mandibles together nervously. "The readings are off the charts. Her adrenaline levels are toxic to standard species." Kale glared at his subordinate. "Shoot her. Both of you. Shoot her now." Kale screamed. He was fumbling with his weapon, trying to switch the setting again, trying to find a button that would make this nightmare stop. The two bullies raised their weapons. They held heavy plasma rifles. If they fired those at this distance, they would burn a hole through the wall and anything behind it. Maya knew she could not let them fire. She could not dodge energy beams. She had to be faster than the light, or at least faster than their fingers. She bent her knees, lowering her center of gravity. The floor groaned under her feet as she pushed off. To Kale and his friends, Maya vanished. One moment she was standing 10 feet away, and the next, she was a blur of motion. She did not run around them, she ran straight at the insectoid. The creature pulled the trigger, but it was too slow. Maya was already inside its guard. She slapped the rifle barrel upward. The plasma bolt shot into the ceiling, melting the lights and raining hot sparks down on them. Maya grabbed the insectoid by its throat. Her fingers sank into the hard exoskeleton like it was made of soft clay. The creature shrieked, a high-pitched, trilling sound, as it dropped the rifle. Its claws scrabbled at Maya's arms, trying to pry her fingers loose, but its grip was weak. It felt like a kitten scratching a stone wall. Maya looked into its many-faceted eyes. She saw the terror there. She saw the realization that its life was over. With a quick twist of her hips, she swung the heavy creature around and slammed it into the floor. The impact was tremendous. The alien's carapace cracked open, green fluid leaking out onto the pristine floor. It twitched once and went still. Maya did not pause to admire her work. She moved instantly to the next target. The reptilian bully was roaring now, a sound of pure panic. It lifted a heavy shock mace, intending to crush her skull. Maya ducked under the swing. The mace hit the floor where her head had been, sending a shockwave that rattled her teeth. Maya drove her shoulder into the reptile's chest. There was a hollow thud as the air was forced from the alien's lungs. She heard ribs snap. The reptile collapsed, gasping for air that would not come. It tried to scramble away, dragging itself with its arms, but Maya placed a boot on its back. She pressed down. She didn't press hard enough to kill it, but hard enough to pin it. She looked up at Kale. They were the only two left standing. The others were broken or unconscious. The hallway looked like a war zone. Sparks showered down from the damaged ceiling, lighting up the scene with flickering orange light. Kale was backing away, his back hitting the unbreakable glass of the viewport that looked out into space. He had dropped his stun pistol. He knew it was useless. His hands were raised in front of him, palms open. "Wait," he gasped, "wait. We can talk about this. You are very strong. You are magnificent. I didn't realize." He was trying to negotiate. He was trying to use words to save his life, the same way he had used technology to try to capture her. Maya walked toward him. She was not running now. She took slow, deliberate steps. She was breathing heavily, wiping the green alien blood from her hands onto her uniform pants. She felt strange. The violence had been easy. It had been terrifyingly easy. These were advanced beings from a superior civilization, but physically, they were made of glass. They were so fragile. It felt unfair. But then, she remembered the nets. She remembered the cages. She remembered the way they had looked at her like she was a piece of meat. "There is nothing to talk about," Maya said. Her voice was calm, too calm. It was the voice of someone who had crossed a line and did not know how to go back. "You tried to kidnap me. You tried to sell me." Kale shook his head frantically. "No, no, it was a test. It was a test of courage. You passed. You passed with honors." He was lying, and they both knew it. Maya stopped 3 feet away from him. She could see the pulse throbbing in his neck. She could see the sweat beading on his forehead. He was terrified. "Please," Kale whispered. "Don't kill me. My family, they have money. We can pay you. Whatever you want." Maya looked at him. She thought about Earth. She thought about the stories her grandfather told her, about hunting in the woods. He told her that when you corner a dangerous animal, you do not hesitate. You do not talk to it. You put it down. "I don't want your money," Maya said. She looked around the hallway. "I just want to go to class." Kale saw his chance. While Maya was looking away, he lunged. He wasn't going for a weapon. He was going for a small knife hidden in his boot. He pulled it out and thrust it toward Maya's stomach. He was desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. Maya saw the movement in the reflection of the glass wall. She didn't dodge. She simply caught his wrist. She caught it in mid-air. The blade stopped inches from her stomach. Kale strained, his face red with effort, trying to push the knife forward. But he could not move her hand. She was an immovable object. Maya looked at his hand. She looked at the small, sharp knife. Then, she looked back at Kale. "You shouldn't have done that," she said softly. With a sharp snap, she broke his wrist. Kale screamed and dropped the knife. Maya kicked the knife away, sending it sliding across the floor into the darkness of the corridor. She grabbed Kale by the collar of his expensive uniform and lifted him up. She lifted him off his feet with one arm, holding him against the glass wall. His feet dangled helplessly in the air. He weighed almost nothing to her. "You were right about one thing," Maya whispered, bringing her face close to his. "I am a primitive beast, and you just walked into the cage." Kale was crying now, sobbing brokenly. The arrogance was completely gone. There was only the raw, primal fear of a prey animal that knows it is about to die. Maya looked at him. She could kill him. She could snap his neck right now. It would be so easy. It would take less effort than opening a jar of pickles. But then she heard the sound of distant sirens. The damage control systems had finally detected the power surge. The automatic shutters were beginning to close along the hallway. If she killed him, there would be an investigation. There would be questions. She might be sent back to Earth, or worse, to a prison lab. She lowered Kale, but she didn't let go. She slammed him against the glass one more time, hard enough to daze him. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he went limp. Maya let him drop to the floor. He landed in a heap next to the broken reptile. Silence fell over the hallway again, broken only by the dripping of fluid from the ceiling and the distant wail of the sirens. Maya stood alone among the bodies. She looked at her hands again. They were bruised and scraped, but they were healing already. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving her feeling shaky and cold. She looked down at her uniform. It was torn and stained. She could not go back to the dorms like this. She could not let anyone see this. She looked at the bodies. They were evidence. She could not leave them here. The thought came to her not from malice, but from cold, hard necessity. She had to clean up the mess. She had to wipe the slate clean. It was time to disappear. The red emergency lights spun in a rhythmic pattern, casting long, bloody shadows across the walls of the ruined hallway. The sirens were getting louder, a wailing sound that signaled the approach of security drones. Maya knew she did not have much time. Panic tried to claw its way up her throat, but she swallowed it down. She looked at the bodies scattered around her. Just a few minutes ago, they had been hunters, arrogant and sure of their superiority. Now, they were just broken meat and leaking fluids. Kale was unconscious against the glass wall, his chest barely moving. The insectoid was crushed, and the reptile was pinned under a heavy beam that had fallen from the ceiling during the fight. There was no mercy in this scene, only the brutal reality of a Deathworlder defending her life. Maya knelt beside the insectoid first. It was the most damaged. Its carapace was shattered, and green ichor pooled beneath it. She checked for a pulse, a reflex from her medical training classes, but she knew it was futile. The neck was twisted at an impossible angle. It was dead. She moved to the reptile next. It was wheezing, bubbles of blood popping at its mouth. Its eyes were wide and glazed. It looked at her, but there was no recognition there, only pain. Maya hesitated for a fraction of a second. She was a student, not a soldier. She had never taken a life before today, but she remembered the nets. She remembered the cages in their bags. They were going to sell her. They were going to erase her life and her future. She hardened her heart. This was not murder, this was survival. She reached out and with a quick, precise motion, ended the reptile's suffering. The wheezing stopped instantly. She stood up and walked over to Kale. He was the leader. He was the one who had planned this. He was breathing shallowly, his face bruised and swollen. Maya looked down at him. He was so fragile. His skin was thin, his bones light. If she squeezed too hard, he would simply break. A dark thought passed through her mind. She could end it all right now. She could snap his neck and blame the fight on a gravity malfunction. No one would question that a Deathworlder lost control. It would be the perfect excuse. But she pushed the thought away. Killing them in the heat of battle was one thing, executing an unconscious prisoner was something else. She had to hold on to her humanity. If she became a monster just to survive, then they had won. She dragged Kale away from the wall and tied his hands together with a piece of wire she ripped from a nearby panel. He wasn't going anywhere, but she needed to be sure. The sound of approaching drones was very loud now. Maya could hear the hum of their anti-gravity engines echoing through the school corridors. They were scanning for life signs. If they found this, the story would be over. She would be arrested, dissected, or worse. She needed to hide the evidence. But there was too much of it. The bodies were heavy and awkward to carry. She looked at the walls of the hallway. She remembered her engineering classes. This section of the school was near the waste recycling vents. The vents were large enough to transport small repair droids. They were also large enough to transport bodies. Maya grabbed the insectoid by the leg. It was heavy, but adrenaline still fueled her muscles. She dragged it across the floor, leaving a smear of green blood. She found the maintenance hatch hidden behind a decorative panel. She pried the panel off, exposing the dark mouth of the vent. She lifted the insectoid and shoved it into the darkness. She heard it slide down the steep shaft, tumbling away into the depths of the school's underbelly. Next, she dragged the reptile. It was heavier, its scales rough against her hands. She grunted with the effort, her muscles straining, but she managed to heave it into the vent as well. One by one, she disposed of the unconscious bullies, stuffing them into the dark tunnels like garbage. It was a gruesome task, but she didn't let herself think about it. She operated like a machine. Lift, drag, shove. Lift, drag, shove. When she was done, the hallway was empty of living enemies. Only the debris remained. The broken glass, the shattered furniture, the scorch marks from the plasma rifles, and the blood. So much blood. Maya looked at the floor. The blood was the biggest problem. It was DNA evidence. It was a map that pointed straight to her. She had to clean it up. She ran to the nearest cleaning supply closet, ignoring the pain in her side where a stun bolt had hit her. She grabbed large containers of industrial solvent, heavy-duty scrubbers, and enzyme foam. She ran back to the hallway and began to scrub. She poured the solvent over the green blood and scrubbed furiously. The chemical burned her nose, making her eyes water, but she didn't stop. She scrubbed until her hands were raw. She needed to erase every trace of the struggle. She picked up the shards of glass and stuffed them into the pockets of her uniform, cutting her fingers in the process. She didn't care. She worked faster than she ever had in her life. As she scrubbed, her mind raced. She needed a story. When the drones arrived, or when security came, they would find her here. She couldn't explain the bodies, but the bodies were gone now. She just had to explain the mess. Maybe she could say there was a gravity surge. No, that wouldn't explain the blood. Maybe she could say she found it like this, but her DNA would be everywhere. She was sweating. She stopped scrubbing for a moment and looked at her hands. They were covered in alien blood and cleaning fluid. She looked like the killer she was. She heard a mechanical click at the end of the hallway. A security drone rounded the corner. Its red optical sensor scanned the area, landing on Maya. She froze. She was standing in the middle of a disaster zone, covered in chemicals, holding a scrub brush. The drone hovered, its engine whining softly. "Identify yourself," the drone droned in a mechanical voice. Maya took a deep breath. She forced her face to relax. She forced her shoulders to slump. She projected an air of exhaustion and confusion, not threat. "I am student Maya," she said, her voice trembling slightly, though not entirely from acting. There was an accident. The gravity plates malfunctioned. I was trying to clean it up before anyone got hurt." The drone scanned her. It detected the high levels of adrenaline in her system, but it also detected the chemical solvents. It detected the gravity fluctuations in the area, which were actually caused by Maya's heavy impacts on the floor. It was a perfect storm of confusion. The drone's logic processor struggled to reconcile the violence of the scene with the helpless-looking student standing in the middle of it. "Severe damage detected to school property," the drone said. "Remain where you are. Maintenance units have been dispatched." Maya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The drone didn't know. It thought she was a witness or a victim. It didn't see a predator. She had tricked the machine. But she wasn't safe yet. The maintenance crews would be smarter than the drones. They would find the drag marks leading to the vent. She had to hide the drag marks too. She got back on her hands and knees and scrubbed the floor even harder. She poured more solvent, creating a foamy mess that covered everything. She slipped and fell, landing hard on her elbow. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. She couldn't leave any trace. She worked with a desperate, frantic energy. Finally, the floor was clean. The smell of the solvent was overpowering, masking the smell of blood and ozone. The hallway looked like the site of a chemical spill, not a slaughter. Maya stood up, her legs shaking. She was exhausted. Every muscle in her body screamed in pain. She had used her strength to its limit, and now her body was demanding rest. But she couldn't rest yet. She had one more thing to do. She went to the wall panel where she had tied Kale up. She had untied him before shoving him into the vent, but the wire was still there. She ripped the wire out completely, destroying the panel. She kicked the wall, denting the metal to make it look like the gravity surge had caused the damage. She needed to make the scene look chaotic and natural, not like a cover-up. She looked at her reflection in a shard of mirror that still clung to the wall. Her face was smeared with dirt and blood. Her eyes were wild, rimmed with red. She looked scary. She wiped her face with her sleeve, trying to make herself look presentable. She had to look like a tired student who had a long day. She had to look harmless. She smoothed her hair back and took a deep breath. The sound of heavy boots echoed from the corridor. The maintenance crew was here. Maya dropped the scrub brush. She sat down on the floor, leaning against the wall. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them wide, staring at nothing. She waited. When the crew turned the corner, they found a young girl sitting alone in a chemical-smelling corridor, surrounded by debris, looking dazed and confused. They didn't see the Deathworlder who had just slaughtered 5 upperclassmen. They saw exactly what she wanted them to see. The trap had been sprung, the hunters had been destroyed, and the predator had vanished back into the disguise of the prey. The sound of heavy boots pounding against the metal floor stopped at the edge of the destroyed corridor. Maya sat very still, her back leaning against a dented wall, her knees pulled up to her chest. 3 security officers stepped into the light. They wore heavy black armor that covered their entire bodies, and they held large shock batons at the ready. They were not human. They were tall, broad-shouldered beings from a high-gravity mining planet, hired by the school because they were strong and tough. But as they looked at the mess, Maya realized she wasn't afraid of them. She had just fought for her life against the best students in the academy. These guards were just doing a job. What happened here? The lead guard barked. His voice was amplified by a speaker in his helmet. Maya looked up, blinking her eyes slowly. She rubbed her face, smearing a bit of the cleaning solvent on her cheek. She had practiced this look in the mirror for years. It was the look of a tired, clumsy student who was overwhelmed by the advanced technology of the galaxy. I don't know, Maya said, letting her voice shake a little bit. I was walking back to my dorm. Suddenly, the gravity plates went crazy. Everything started flying. I tried to hold on, but the furniture, it just smashed everywhere. She pointed a trembling hand at the broken glass and the twisted metal. The lead guard scanned the area with a red light from his helmet. He saw the chemical foam on the floor. He smelled the strong, acidic odor of the industrial cleaner. "Why is there solvent on the floor?" the guard asked suspiciously. He took a step closer, his weapon raised. Maya shrunk back, pressing herself tighter against the wall. She needed to seem harmless. She needed to seem like the kind of creature that would run away, not fight back. I panicked, Maya stammered. "I thought I could fix it before the teachers came. I didn't want to get blamed for breaking the school property. I know I am not rich. I can't pay for this." It was a perfect lie. It played on the guards' assumptions. They knew humans were poor. They knew humans were desperate to stay in the school. They looked at her and saw a frightened girl scrubbing a floor because she was scared of a fine. The guard lowered his weapon slightly. He looked at the twisted debris. He tapped a button on his wrist computer. "System check," he muttered. "Logs show a massive gravity fluctuation in this sector 12 minutes ago. Duration, 3 minutes. The guard looked back at Maya. "It matches your story?" Maya let out a long breath, allowing her shoulders to drop as if she were relieved. "Yes. It was terrifying," she said. "I thought I was going to float away into the ceiling." The guard snorted, a sound of amusement. "Gravity surge," he said to his partners. "Just a malfunction. Kids these days." He looked at Maya. "You are lucky you weren't crushed, little human. These walls are reinforced, but the furniture is not." Maya nodded vigorously. "I know," she said. "Can I go now? I have a biology exam tomorrow." The guard looked at her one last time, his sensors scanning her biometrics. He saw her elevated heart rate and her high adrenaline levels. But Maya was covered in chemical fumes and sitting in a disaster zone. His computer flagged it as stress response to trauma. "Go," the guard said, waving his hand dismissively. "We will file a report. You go to the medical bay if you feel dizzy." Maya stood up slowly. She groaned a little, holding her side as if she were hurt. "Thank you, officer," she whispered. She grabbed her bag from the corner where she had left it. She walked past them, keeping her head down. As soon as she turned the corner and was out of their sight, her expression changed instantly. The fear vanished. Her back straightened. She walked fast, but not too fast. She had to get away from the scene, but she had one more stop to make. She walked through the quiet school, sticking to the shadows. The adrenaline was wearing off now, and her body was starting to hurt. Her bruises were throbbing, and her muscles felt like they were on fire. But she ignored the pain. She headed for the waste disposal center in the basement of the academy. It was a dangerous place, full of crushers and incinerators, but it was the only place where the rest of the evidence could disappear. She used her student card to override the simple lock on the service door. It beeped and slid open. She slipped inside. The air was hot and smelled like burnt plastic and rot. It was not a pleasant place, but to Maya, it felt like a sanctuary because it was empty. She walked to the main incinerator chute. It was a massive, dark tunnel that led to the heart of the school's furnace. Anything that went down there was instantly vaporized by extreme heat. Maya reached into her deep pockets. She pulled out the alien weapons she had taken from the bullies. The plasma rifles, the sonic disruptors, and Kale's silver stun pistol. These were high-tech, illegal weapons. If she threw them in the regular trash, the scanners would find them. If she left them, the guards would find them. She had to destroy them. She threw the weapons one by one into the chute. They clattered down the dark hole, disappearing from sight. She listened for the satisfying whoosh of the furnace igniting. Then, She pulled out the last piece of evidence. It was the student identification cards of the 5 bullies. She held the small metal cards in her hand. Kale's card had his picture on it. He was smiling, looking confident and arrogant. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. These men had families. They had people who would miss them. In a few hours, the school would realize they were missing. They would check the logs. They would see that Kale and his friends were in this hallway. They would find the damage. They would ask questions. Maya knew that the gravity surge story would not hold up forever if they started a real investigation. They would find the drag marks she had missed. They would find the DNA under her fingernails. She had to make sure they never looked for them in the right place. She looked at a computer terminal on the wall near the incinerator. It was a simple system, used by the janitorial staff to log waste disposal. Maya had learned a lot about computers from her engineering classes. She pulled a small cable from her bag and plugged it into the port. She typed quickly, her fingers flying across the screen. She wasn't trying to hack the whole school, just change one specific record. She accessed the transporter logs. She looked at the history for the last hour. She found the entry for Kale and his group. It said they had transported into the school. She deleted it. Then, she created a new entry. She falsified a log that said a private shuttle had requested permission to dock at the secondary airlock, requesting immediate departure for VIP guests. She routed the request through Kale's personal code. It was a simple trick, but it was effective. If the school checked, they would see that Kale and his friends had left the school in a hurry shortly after classes ended. They would assume they had skipped school to go to a nearby moon or station for fun. It would explain their absence. It would create a gap in time where nobody knew where they were. It would cast suspicion on them, not on her. By the time anyone realized they were dead, they would be looking for them on the other side of the sector. Maya unplugged the cable. She wiped the terminal clean with her sleeve to remove her fingerprints. Then, she dropped the ID cards into the incinerator chute. With the cards gone, and the transport log changed, the trail went cold. She stood in the hot, dark room for a moment, catching her breath. She felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders. The physical evidence was gone. The digital evidence was corrupted. The bodies were hidden in the ventilation system, slowly drifting down to the lower levels where they would likely be eaten by waste recycling creatures or dissolved by bacteria. It was a brutal end for them, but they had chosen their path. Maya had just ensured they stayed on it. She felt a pang of guilt in her chest, a whisper of conscience that told her she should feel bad. But she pushed it down. She had done what she had to do. She had survived. That was the law of the death world. She turned and left the disposal room. She walked back through the hallways, but she didn't go to the dorms yet. She had one final task. She needed to clean herself. She was still covered in cleaning fluid, dirt, and the faint smell of alien blood. She couldn't go back to her room looking like this. Her roommate would ask questions. Maya went to the communal showers on the ground floor. It was late, so the room was empty. She stripped off her ruined uniform and threw it into a disposal bin labeled biohazard. She turned the water on as hot as she could stand it. She stepped under the spray, letting the scalding water wash away the grime, the sweat, and the memory of the fight. She scrubbed her skin until it was red and raw. She watched the dark water swirl down the drain, carrying the evidence away. She washed her hair, picking out tiny pieces of glass and debris. As she stood under the water, she closed her eyes and saw Kale's face. She saw the fear in his eyes. She felt the crunch of bone under her hands. She shivered despite the heat. She knew that this moment would change her. She was no longer just a student trying to fit in. She was a killer. She was a protector of her own secret. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. But she also felt a strange sense of power. She was not weak. She was not helpless. The galaxy thought humans were primitive, but tonight, the primitive girl had outsmarted the advanced civilization. She turned off the water and grabbed a rough towel. She dried herself off vigorously. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her body was covered in bruises, dark purple and blue marks on her arms, legs, and torso. They looked painful, and but they were already fading. Her metabolism was healing her rapidly. By morning, the worst of them would be yellow. By the next day, they would be gone. She put on a fresh set of clothes she had brought in her bag. A simple t-shirt and pants. She looked normal again. She looked like Maya. She tied her hair back in a ponytail and took a deep breath. She picked up her bag, feeling the weight of her datapad and books inside. It felt surreal that she still had homework to do. The world kept turning, even though her world had just been turned upside down. She left the showers and walked out into the cool night air of the academy grounds. The stars were shining brightly above the dome. It was a beautiful sight. She looked up at the sky, wondering if there was anyone out there who understood what she had to do. Probably not. She was alone. But that was okay. She was strong enough to be alone. She adjusted the strap of her bag and started walking toward the student dormitories. She needed to sleep. Tomorrow was a new day. She had classes to attend. She had a life to live. And she had a secret to keep. The hunters had come after class, but they wouldn't be coming back. Maya had made sure of that. The walk back to the dormitory building felt longer than usual. The campus grounds were quiet, bathed in the soft, artificial blue light of the moon that orbited the station. Beautiful alien flowers lined the path, glowing gently in the dark. Normally, Maya would stop to look at them, but tonight she kept her head down and her hands in her pockets. Her body was exhausted, her muscles screaming for rest, but her mind was wide awake. Every shadow seemed to move, and every sound made her tense up. She felt exposed, even though she knew she was safe. The bodies were gone, the weapons were destroyed, and the computer logs were changed. But the feeling of the alien's neck snapping under her fingers was still fresh in her mind. It was a sensation she knew she would never forget. She reached the dormitory entrance and swiped her keycard. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The lobby was empty, which was a relief. Maya didn't want to talk to anyone. She didn't want to explain why she was walking so stiffly or why her clothes looked slightly disheveled despite her change. She walked quickly to the elevator and pressed the button for the 4th floor. As the elevator ascended, she watched the numbers light up. She took a deep breath, trying to compose her face. She needed to look normal. She needed to look like Maya, the quiet student who studied too much and kept to herself. When the doors opened on her floor, the smell of coffee hit her. It was coming from the common room. Maya stepped out and saw her roommate, Anna, sitting on a sofa with a book. Anna was a kind girl from a peaceful farming planet. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and completely harmless. She looked up as Maya entered the room. "Hi Maya," Anna said, smiling. "I was worried when you weren't at dinner. Are you okay?" Maya stopped. Her heart skipped a beat. She felt a sudden wave of guilt. Anna was her friend, and Maya was lying to her. Maya forced a smile onto her face. "Hi Anna," she said. "Yeah, I'm fine. I just fell asleep in the library. I was so tired from the physics exam yesterday." Anna laughed lightly. "That sounds like you. Always studying." She looked closely at Maya. "You look a bit flushed. Did you run all the way back?" Maya nodded quickly. "Yes, I realized how late it was and I didn't want to be locked out." She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to hide the stiffness in her legs. "Well, I'm glad you're back," Anna said, turning back to her book. "I saved you some dessert. It's in the fridge." "Thanks," Maya said. "I think I'm just going to go to bed, though. I'm really worn out." "Okay, see you in the morning," Anna said. Maya walked into their shared room and closed the door behind her. She leaned against the wood, letting out a long, shaky breath. She had done it. She had fooled her roommate. But lying to Anna felt harder than fighting the aliens. Maya walked over to her desk and sat down. Her room was small, cluttered with books, clothes, and little souvenirs from Earth. It was a safe space. She pulled out her datapad and stared at the screen. She had an essay due the next day on galactic economics. It seemed so pointless now. She had just killed 5 people, and now she had to write about trade routes and currency values. But she knew she had to do it. She had to maintain her cover. If her grade slipped, or if she acted strangely, people would start asking questions. And questions were dangerous. She opened the file and began to type. Her fingers moved slowly at first, but then she found a rhythm. Writing the essay was oddly calming. It was normal. It was boring. And after the chaos of the evening, boring was exactly what she needed. For an hour, she lost herself in the world of economics, forgetting about the blood and the violence. Suddenly, her datapad beeped. It was a news alert. Maya's heart stopped. She hesitated, then tapped the screen. A holographic news anchor appeared. "Breaking news," the anchor said. "A private shuttle carrying 5 students from the Galactic Academy has disappeared from radar. The students, identified as Kale and his group, reportedly requested an unauthorized departure earlier this evening. Authorities are searching the sector." Maya stared at the screen. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was working. The fake log she had planted was being accepted as truth. The news showed a picture of Kale. He looked handsome and confident. The anchor speculated that they might have gone to a party on a nearby moon. "They are just irresponsible kids," the anchor said, shaking his head. "Skipping classes to have fun. They will likely be found with a hangover tomorrow." Maya muted the broadcast. She felt a cold satisfaction in her chest. They were not irresponsible kids. They were predators who made a mistake. And now, the galaxy thought they were just partying. It was ironic. Their arrogance had hidden their cruelty, and now their reputation for arrogance was hiding their deaths. Maya closed the news feed. She didn't need to see any more. She finished her essay, saved the file, and shut down her datapad. She stood up and walked to the small window in the room. Outside, the stars were still shining. The galaxy was huge and indifferent. Countless civilizations were living, fighting, and dying out there. Today, 5 lives had ended in a bloody hallway, and the universe didn't even blink. Maya looked at her reflection in the glass. She saw a young woman with brown hair and tired eyes. She looked normal. but inside, she felt different. She felt older. She had touched the primal part of herself today, the part of her that came from a planet where everything wanted to kill you. She had used that power to survive. She realized that she wasn't just a human from Earth. She was a weapon. She was something that the other species feared, even if they didn't know why. She turned away from the window and got ready for bed. She brushed her teeth and put on her pajamas. As she lay down, her body relaxed into the mattress. The adrenaline was completely gone now, replaced by a deep, heavy exhaustion. She closed her eyes. She expected to have nightmares. She expected to see the aliens' faces or feel the crunch of bones. But as she drifted off, she didn't see the violence. She saw the path forward. She knew she would have to be careful. She would have to be vigilant. But she also knew she could handle it. She was strong. She was smart. And she was a survivor. The next morning, the alarm on her datapad woke her up. Maya groaned and sat up. Her body was sore, covered in large bruises that were now a sickly yellow color. She stretched, wincing slightly as her muscles protested. She got out of bed and walked to the mirror. The bruises were fading fast, but they were still visible. She put on a long-sleeved shirt and pants to cover them. She looked at herself in the mirror one last time. Her face was calm. Her eyes were steady. The terrified girl from the night before was gone. In her place was a girl who knew exactly what she was capable of. She walked out into the common room. Anna was already there, making breakfast. "Morning," Anna said cheerfully. "Did you hear the news? Those rich kids are still missing. The teachers are furious." Maya walked over to the counter and grabbed an apple. "Yes, I heard," Maya said calmly. She took a bite of the apple. It was crisp and sweet. "Maybe they just needed a break," she said with a shrug. "You know how stressed they get." Anna rolled her eyes. "Please. They are just bullies. I won't miss them if they don't come back." Maya looked at Anna. A small smile touched her lips. "No," Maya said softly. "I don't think anyone will miss them." She picked up her bag and headed for the door. "Have a good day at class," Maya called back. "You too," Anna replied. Maya walked out of the dormitory and into the morning light. The campus was bustling with students. They were rushing to classes, chatting, and laughing. None of them knew what had happened in the dark hallway the night before. None of them knew that a monster walked among them. But Maya didn't feel like a monster. She felt like a protector. She had protected herself, and in doing so, she had made the school a little bit safer. She walked toward her classroom, her steps steady and confident. She was a Deathworlder. She was human. And she was ready for whatever the galaxy threw at her next.